Hi, I'm Marion Buck-Murray, and I'm a certified EFT practitioner. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use EFT tapping. So first of all, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It's a powerful and very simple tapping technique where you use your fingertips to tap on specific acupressure points on the face, the torso, and the hand. And what this tapping does is it actually helps to reduce cortisol. Cortisol, of course, is our major stress hormone. It's a good hormone. It's important for our health. However, when it's running too high, when we're really stressed out or when we're under constant, persistent stress, high cortisol can actually trigger the loss of blood from the thinking part of your brain. And when this happens, it makes it harder to think clearly. It makes your brain less effective, less powerful. So with EFT tapping, what you can do is you can actually reduce the cortisol and bring the blood back to the thinking part of your brain, making your brain more effective. Now, cortisol is really important, a very important hormone. When cortisol is too high, it can offset other hormones that are important as well. And so you want to keep it at a nice balance. And, when cortisol is too high, it can actually trigger weight gain. And it's also the underlying factor in many illnesses. So using EFT tapping to help balance your cortisol is a really good thing to do. And it's so simple to learn, you can use it on a daily basis. So in addition to reducing cortisol, EFT tapping is also a very powerful technique for minimizing, reducing, and neutralizing unwanted feelings. So feelings that feel uncomfortable, feelings that are getting in your way. So, for example, anger, sadness, fear, anxiety. EFT tapping can actually reduce the intensity of these feelings. And in addition to being a really good tool for feelings, EFT tapping can also help clear away persistent limiting beliefs and patterns. So it's a really powerful tool. It's very simple, and I'm going to show you how to use the basic recipe. So the basic EFT recipe is what I use when I record any of my tapping audios. So if you're using any of my tapping audios, the basic recipe is what I use. So once you learn the points that I'll show you in this video, you can use any of the audios with ease. And the first thing you want before you even start tapping, or you even get into the room to start tapping, is a glass of water. So have a glass of water handy when you're tapping because it helps to facilitate the flow of energy. So you want to drink some water before you tap and drink it like if you're doing a few rounds in between rounds of tapping and then afterwards. The other thing you're going to want is a nice quiet space. Close the door if possible so you can have privacy. And turn off electronic devices so you don't get interrupted and distracted. So once you have your water and your quiet space, you're ready to begin tapping. And the first ingredient in the tapping recipe is your target. So your target is something like a feeling, such as anxiety or fear, sadness, a feeling that you don't want to feel that's getting in your way and you want to help reduce. And it can also be the feeling combined with the thoughts of some sort of circumstance or event that triggers the feeling. The more specific you are, the better. So, for example, a target might be a phone call that you have to make, and for whatever reason, it's making you feel anxious. So you could tap on that, having the phone call be the situation that triggers the anxiety. Very specific, and the more specific, the better. You can tap on things in your past that still trigger feelings. You can tap on things that are current in your life right now, or things that you're looking at in the future. Anything, you can tap on really anything, and keeping it as specific as possible, you'll have the best results. So once you have your target, you want to think about the feeling and imagine the feeling that it brings up. And the more you can bring it up in your body, the better. And once you have tuned into the feeling that's getting triggered, you want to notice where it is in your body, and you also want to give it a rating on a scale from 0 to 10. It's not absolutely necessary to give your rating a feeling, but it's helpful because what it does is it gives you a benchmark. When you're done tapping, you can go back to the feeling and just say, okay, what happened to this feeling? Is it as intense right now? So it gives you a good benchmark. So rate your feeling, if you want, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the most intense. And then you're ready to create the setup statement. So the setup statement is what we use on the first point, which is the karate chop point. And the setup statement has two parts, the target and acceptance. So what it sounds like is, even though I'm scared to make this phone call, or I feel anxious thinking about this phone call, I accept myself and how I feel, or I accept the way that I feel, or I accept that this is how I feel, or I deeply and completely love myself. There are many ways that you can do both parts of the statement, but there are two parts, and the first part is the more negative part, and the second part of the statement is acceptance. And what that does is it brings this negative thing that you don't want to feel into a field of acceptance. And that right away begins to help it neutralize and reduce in intensity. And what you're doing while you're saying the setup statement is you're tapping on your karate chop point, this first point, and that tapping itself helps to neutralize the feeling. So the setup statement is what you use on the first point, this karate chop point, right between the bottom of the pinky and the beginning of the wrist, this fleshy part of the hand, tapping with your fingertips on the karate chop point. You say the setup statement 3 times. So even though I feel this anxiety when I think about this phone call, I accept that that's how I feel, and I accept myself. So something like that, you would say it 3 times. And it's okay to vary what you say, just as long as you're focusing. The goal here is to focus in on the problem and the target, and also bring in some form of acceptance. And so whatever way you say that is fine. If you're listening to any of the audios I've created, I will be guiding you through the setup statement, so you don't have to figure it out, and any of the reminder phrases that we use on the rest of the points. Okay, so first the karate chop point, saying the setup statement 3 times, and as you're tapping, you're using your fingertips, just keep tapping. As we move through the points, you're always going to be tapping your fingertips. Okay, so tap until you go to the next point. So the point after the karate chop point is this eyebrow point right on the tip of the eyebrow, where the hair of the eyebrow meets the bone of the nose, using 2 fingertips just to tap there. And this is where we say what's called the reminder phrase. So the reminder phrase is 1 word, 2 words, maybe a few words that helps you tune in to the target. So it might be something like this anxiety or this phone call. If you're doing this by yourself without listening to audio, you might want to say the same reminder phrase on all of the points. When you're listening to the audio that I've created, you'll notice that I vary the reminder phrases. The goal is to just keep tuned in to the energy that you are seeking to release. And by tuning into that energy and tapping, you are helping it release and reduce and, go away. Okay, so eyebrow point, then the side of the eye, right on the bone, almost into the soft of your eye. Then underneath the eye, right on that bone. And all through these points, we're saying the reminder phrase. Doesn't matter how many times you tap, you're just really tapping as you're talking and saying the phrases. Then the next point is underneath the nose, right above the lip. The next point after that is the chin point, which is between the lip and the chin in this crease. Then the next point is the collarbone point, so find the notch in your neck, slide your fingers over the top of the collarbone, and then down, okay? And you'll find a soft indentation on either side, tapping there. Then underneath the arms, so I make like a bear claw, curling my fingers in, sticking my thumbs out, right on the ribs, underneath my arms, tapping there with my knuckles, and then the top of the head. Okay, so that's one round of the basic recipe. And you may have noticed that sometimes I'm tapping with one hand, sometimes I'm tapping with both hands. It doesn't matter. You can tap on either side of the body, and you can use both hands if you like, or you can use one hand. It really doesn't matter. You're going to get the results no matter how you're doing it. And the other thing is when you're tapping on the karate chop point, I use my right hand to tap on my left because I'm right-handed. It's usually easiest to use your dominant hand. However, if it feels better to use the other hand, do what feels best to you. That's what's always important for EFT tapping, is to do it in the way that's working for you. And as long as you're hitting the points, you're getting the results. Okay, so just very quickly now to go back over those points, it's the karate chop point while saying the setup statement, then the tip of the eyebrow right where it meets the bone of the nose, then the side of the eye, almost into the soft of your eye, underneath the eye, underneath the nose, chin point, collarbone point, underneath the arms, and the top of the head. And you take a nice deep breath. And have some water. That's a good time to have some water. And after you've been tapping, if you've been listening to one of the audios I've created, first of all, you'll notice that maybe I'll be going around the points on the face and the torso maybe 2 or 3 times before stopping on the top of the head. Once you're finished with the round, pause and notice how you feel. And if you've given your feeling a rating on a scale of 0 to 10, this is where you look at it again. And just notice if it's gone down. And so say you started with a feeling that you rated at an 8 or a 9, and perhaps it goes down to a 5 or a 6. Maybe you want to get it down a little lower. It's not necessary to get your feeling down to a 0. The goal is to reduce our feelings enough so that they feel much more manageable. And so if you feel like your feeling is still a little more intense than you want it, keep tapping and going around on the points while focusing on that feeling, and it will continue to reduce. So one thing to note about EFT tapping is that we start with a negative before moving to the positive. It's sort of like cleaning out the dirt from a wound. You want to clean out the dirt first before putting on any type of bandage. And so with EFT, we want to clear out the negative feelings, the negative energy, before introducing, things like positive affirmations. And the reason why is because if you start trying to do a lot of positive affirmations, which you can do with EFT tapping, it can be very effective. But the thing is, if you have a lot of negative belief or feeling underneath that, it's not going to land very well. So we want to focus first on the negative before moving on to the positive. And don't worry about focusing on the negative, because when we focus on the negative, we're actually helping to clear it away. Okay. So now, you might, and probably are, often in situations where, you might get a little bit triggered, or something happens where you feel some emotion coming up. And maybe you know how to do EFT tapping, but you don't want to start tapping on all of the points. So there are a couple of points that you can use at any time that will really be helpful in any type of situation. So the first point is this karate chop point. And just tapping on the karate chop point with your fingertips while breathing deeply is enough to help you reduce cortisol and feel more peaceful. So this point is really good for times when you're feeling anxious or fearful. It's even good for feelings of panic. And make sure that you breathe deeply while you're doing this tapping, because that really facilitates the process. Okay, then now the other point is the collarbone point. So tapping on the collarbone point is a good thing to do when you're maybe having a conversation with somebody and they say something really upsetting to you and you feel triggered. And perhaps a lot of emotion comes up and it makes it difficult to speak. So tapping on the collarbone point, breathing deeply, just taking that pause is enough to bring down the intensity of the feeling. And once you bring down the intensity, it's much easier to speak. So that's EFT tapping in a nutshell. If you have any questions about what you saw in the video, or about EFT tapping, or if you'd like to learn more about my services and products, please reach out to me. You can reach me at Marian, that's MARIAN, at marianbuckmurray.com. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye for now.